Now, at first, it may seem like what I've picked to talk about today has nothing to do with my channel, but my channel has to do with exposing cops and along those lines, exposing tyranny. And what is tyranny? It's an oppressive government who sees other people within their country as people that should be oppressed, people who should be put down under the thumb of those who are in government. And what is government? Government is an illusion. Government is the idea that some people have the right to rule and others have the right to and the obligation to obey those rulers, or the rulers can rightly punish those people. And they believe they're perfectly justified in doing that. So when I saw this interview from Anderson Cooper toward Cornel West, and when I saw it, I had to talk about it, but Cornel West, I've seen enough of his interviews to arrive at the conclusion that this guy is not stupid. This guy is articulate. He seems to be thoughtful in his responses. Do I believe Cornel West is on our side? I absolutely do not believe he's on our side. As a matter of fact, he's an avowed socialist. This right here, just from his Wikipedia page, he is a socialist. West draws intellectual contributions from multiple traditions, including Christianity, the Black Church, democratic socialism, left-wing populism, neo-pragmatism, and transcendentalism. So he is a leftist. He's an avowed left-wing populist, which means that he also buys into the left versus right paradigm lie garbage. So am I under just because I think he's smart, just because I think he's intelligent, am I under the delusion that he is on our side? No, he's not. Number one, he's a socialist. I don't care if you're socialist, communist. These are all political positions and ideologies, which basically is a group of people has the right to rob and rule other people. I don't care what, are there nuances to socialism and communism and Marxism? Yes, there are levels, there are nuances to it, but the bottom line is it's the right to rule and the right to rob people that they're claiming to be protecting and serving. I don't care. It's basically a power and wealth transfer. It's a forced power and wealth transfer when you're talking about socialism or communism or Marxism or even corrupt capitalism called corporatism or cronyism. So West is not on our side. And at the same time, when he appeared on Anderson Cooper, it's almost like CNN went off the rails for a second. I'm going to play this. I'm going to make some comments about it, but stay tuned till about the 8 or 9 minute mark on this, because Cornel West is coming against what we always say of the CNNs of the world, the ABCs, the Fox News of the world. They are the propaganda arm for the military industrial complex. At all costs, we need to protect the defense contractors. And who wins in war? The defense contractors, people who make the armaments, people who make the uniforms, the helmets, the tanks, the bombs. Those are the people who come out winning. War is a racket. If you doubt that war is a racket, look at the writings of Major General Smedley Butler called "War is a Racket," and it'll shed some nuance and shed some light on your view of what war actually is. So let's listen to some of this back and forth from Anderson Cooper and Cornel West. It gets super, super interesting. Check this out.
Party candidate Cornel West, who joins us now. Dr. West, appreciate you being with us. It's good to see you.
It's always a blessing to see you, and I salute your two precious gifts from heaven.
Thank
Brother
you.
Sebastian, Brother Wyatt. Yes, indeed.
They're doing well. Thank you. I want to ask you, Senator Manchin up in New Hampshire tonight, he seems to be testing the waters there. He says the parties are too far to the left and to the right. What do you think of his politics?
Well, I just read the pamphlet Common Sense, and my God, they had the audacity to rename that after the great Thomas Paine's revolutionary pamphlet of January 10th, 1976, that was critical of all forms of hierarchy in the name of the dignity of those Sly Stone called everyday people. I don't think that the No Labels Party, with their hundreds of $1 million flowing already, our fundamental focus on what I'm concerned about, which is the plight of poor and working people trying to come to terms with the cop cities. Why do the critiques of the cop cities trying to come to terms with striking workers, be they in Hollywood, be they in Amazon, be they at UPS, coming to terms with the echo side.
Cop City, by the way, that's basically what's going on in Atlanta, Georgia. They're making this big cop city that a lot of people are, up in arms about, and rightly so. We don't need, we already have standing armies. We don't need cop cities. And that, I'm sure, is going to be used as a prototype. What's going on in Atlanta, or what they want to go on in Atlanta, is going to be used as a prototype to spread it all throughout the country.
With the fossil fuel companies, steel, corporate greed running out of control. We're at a moment now, my brother, where if we don't come to terms with this massive callousness and indifference to the plight of poor and working people, we're going to lose everything. The planet, democracy, qualitative relations with each other. That's how life and death like our situation is, my brother.
By the way, help the poor working man will always be the alibi of tyrants. That's always the drumbeat of tyrants. Tyrants don't come along going, let's see, who can we oppress? Who can we suppress? Whose lives can we ruin? No, they come in the form of a savior. Hey, we're going to lift you from your plight. We're going to release the shackles from your wrists. We're going to relieve you of your burden. They always come with good intentions. Good intentions will always be pleaded for every assumption of authority. Good intentions are necessity. Necessity is the plea of every infringement of human freedoms. It's the argument of tyrants. It always will be the argument of tyrants. It will always be the creed of slaves.
Very much so.
You know the concern, certainly. You've been asked this question a million times from a lot of Democrats and Republicans against Trump, that a third-party candidate like yourself could siphon votes away from President Biden. David Axelrod recently tweeted saying in 2016, the Green Party played an outside role in the tipping the election to Donald Trump. Now with Cornel West as their likely nominee, they could easily do it again.
So what is that right there? That's the left versus right paradigm lie again, getting people to be bought into the left party or the right party. Now we've got the Green Party, and nothing changes with these additional parties because they still want to rob you. They still want to rule you. They still want to force their edicts and their laws and their ordinances and their restrictions upon you.
Risky business. Now, I know you said you don't believe Jill Stein made that big a difference in the vote count in 2016. In Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, her votes did exceed Trump's margin over Clinton. So how do you answer that critique that you will be siphoning votes away and potentially leading to a Trump victory?
Well, part of it is that nearly 40% of our precious citizens every 2 and 4 years decide not to vote at all. And
that is a very, very good thing. What if 90% of us did that? What if 95% of us did that? What if we just started ignoring these political parasites? How would the landscape change then?
We know that the so-called spoilers, which is a category you can imagine I don't accept at all, over 2/3 of those who vote, it could be a Gary Johnson, a Sister Jill Stein, Brother Ralph Nader, whoever. People say they would never vote for the two parties. And I can understand those two parties become too corrupt. Their politicians are too conformist. Too many of the politicians themselves are just cowardly, will just say anything. What about truth? What about justice? Truth and justice bigger than all of us, bigger than every party, every race, every person. If you're concerned about truth and justice, then you can't be cowardly, complacent, or conformist, and especially if you look at the world through the lens of those who are incarcerated, those who are in ghettos and hoods and barrios. Brother David Axelrod, he looks at the world through the lens of the establishment. Well, of course, from the lens of the establishment, he's concerned about reproducing the establishment. My God, my God. There's no doubt about that. In the 1850s, both parties supported slavery.
But I think he's probably
with
more
the Labor Party.
I think he seems more, though. David Axelrod, he seems more interested in preventing.
He's bringing out some really, really good points, and it's all being deflected by Anderson Cooper.
Former President Trump.
CIA, former CIA asset, Anderson Cooper.
Trump from getting reelected, more than, I'd say, recreating the establishment.
Yes. No? Well, no, I'm talking about the Democratic Party establishment, though, brother.
Oh, okay.
You see, the Axelrod is, you see what I mean? You would agree, he's very much part of the Democratic Party establishment.
Well, His interests. Anyway, I don't want to speak for him, but you criticized President.
Absolutely.
You criticized President Biden, saying recently that he contributed, in your words, I'm quoting, contributed to a crime against humanity when he became the architect of the mass incarceration regime in the 1990s. You're referring to the 1994 Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act that then Senator Biden sponsored. You also said it's, quote, very clear that his cognitive powers are in decline. You have had a remarkable career. You've championed those whose voices have been silenced all your life. We've had you on the program a ton of times talking about that. You've never run a large bureaucracy or had any major governmental leadership role. Isn't that important to actually governing as president?
Oh, absolutely. I'd have to bring in people who are experienced, but the important thing is your vision and the lens through which you view the world. Policy is something that can be worked out in light of vision. If your vision is one of militarism abroad, then you're going to be preoccupied with wars and militaristic adventures. We've known Biden's got a long history. I don't think he's actually seen a war.
I like what he said there. I'll let him finish here.
That he hadn't supported.
Biden hasn't seen a war that he hasn't supported. Just like John McCain, just like most Republicans and most Democrats, they haven't seen a war that they haven't supported. In other words, they're in full support of the bankster-bought wars.
I think the invasion and occupation of Iraq was a crime.
I like how he said that. You can change your policies to align with your vision. The most important thing is to have the vision. And the vision is rooted in character. It's rooted in what he's going to call truth. And it's rooted in justice. You can massage all the policies as long as your foundation is truth, justice, and that's what your vision is. But, the problem with all tyrants is that they will say their vision is truth and justice and doing good for the people, but it always turns out the exact opposite.
Crime against humanity. How many precious hundreds of thousands of Iraqis were killed based on a lie? Well, Biden was running interference in that regard. I think mass incarceration in the United States in the last 40 years is a crime against humanity. I've taught in prisons for 41 years. I've stayed in contact with the rich humanity of my brothers and sisters who have been incarcerated. And many have done things they shouldn't have done. And many are there because they're innocent. But the important thing is, they are sites of barbarity. We ought to be ashamed to live in a country when you look at the conditions of our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated. And it's not just the 1994 crime bill. You can go back to the Biden Thernstrom. He was a Strom Thernstrom bills of 84 and 86 and 91 and then 94. You see what I mean?
This guy has a serious head full of knowledge to be able to cite that kind of thing and put Anderson Cooper and the Counterfeit News Network on blast with that knowledge. Classic. But he's just warming up. Stay tuned.
So it's just a matter of trying to be truthful. I'm not trying to trash Brother Biden. I really not. I'm trying to make him accountable for his actions in light of how the wretched of the earth are treated in this nation and around the world. And that's.
So I don't know if you caught that, but he had already said that he knows that Biden has never seen a war that he didn't like, but he still calls Biden. I'm not trying to trash Brother Biden. This guy, not Cornel West, but all these political parasites are warmongering tyrants. How can anybody call them brother when they're trying to destroy your brothers throughout the world, your sisters throughout the world? Are you going to call them your brother? Do you call barbarians your brother?
It's true for any politician, be it Obama, Biden, Clinton, Bush, Trump. All of them have to be measured by the same standard of truth and justice.
I agree.
I want to ask you about the war in Ukraine, because I saw you tweeted out, you said NATO is an expanding instrument of U.S. global power that provoked Russia into a criminal invasion and occupation of Ukraine. You said this proxy war between the American empire and the Russian Federation could lead to World War III. We must stop the war and war crimes, including cluster bombs used by all parties, and embark on diplomatic talks that should lead to a just peace.
Anderson Cooper and CNN is going to have a problem with that statement. I didn't say that statement. You didn't say that statement. Cornel West said that statement. Facebook or YouTube or whoever, whatever outlet or platform I put this on. Cornel West said that. The question is it truthful? Is that a truthful statement? Are there grains of truth scattered throughout?
You believe, how are you going to bring all sides to the table on Ukraine? And do you really believe that that NATO provoked Russia into invading Ukraine?
Well, when Russia was promised that NATO would not move 1 inch, and then a few years later, you got 13 former Soviet related countries.
But wait a minute. No, but you're talking about in 1990, there was an agreement signed that NATO would not move into East Germany, but actually nothing was said about further east. And it was at the very least it was ambiguous. You can there's an argument to be made.
It was formal and informal talks, but I mean, you know the great George Kennan, who's probably had the finest minds of the establishment when it comes to foreign affairs. He said he doesn't understand why NATO needs to exist any longer because it's defensive. Well, the collapse of the Soviet Empire meant, in fact, you no longer even needed NATO. Europe could come up with its own security, but
it doesn't seem like that because the people
as an arm of the American empire.
So basically, Cornel West is saying, hey, Kennett said, we need to dissolve and disband NATO. And now here's the propaganda arm for the military-industrial complex, the mouthpiece of the counterfeit news network, Anderson Cooper. He's going to be, no, wait a second. We need NATO. We don't need to dissolve NATO. We need NATO. How can Europe protect itself unless we had NATO in place as Kevlar to protect them?
That's the challenge.
You don't believe, though, that the people of Ukraine right now need NATO to defend against Russian aggression?
We need NATO.
Well, the people of Ukraine right now who are suffering, and I'm in deep solidarity with their suffering, they are being caught between this proxy war between the American empire and the Russian Federation. Federation. Now,
but that's not really true. But Dr. West, I mean, it wasn't early on. I mean, you're far more educated than I am, but early.
Anderson Cooper is going to try to convince his audience that there are not power brokers in play in Europe and in America, and that the American empire has no influence on NATO.
Early on, it was Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Hungary who wanted to join NATO. Warsaw Pact countries, suddenly free, did not want to be under the yoke of the former Soviet Union any longer, and they are the ones who applied to join NATO. It wasn't the U.S. pushing these countries in an expansion play. It was these countries suddenly free. The people. Yeah,
no expansion play except what Newland and Biden said about what would happen if anything happened to Nord Stream. Yeah, no expansion play at all. That looks like an expansion play, Anderson Pupa. It sure does.
In those countries saying, we want to be in the EU. NATO is the fastest way. It's a kind of a stepping stone in the EU. We want that. We want to turn to the West. No, would you have denied Hungary, Czechoslovakia, the choice?
Well, I mean, one, I would have followed George Kennan. I would have abolished NATO right after the collapse of the Soviet Empire, and I would have tried to welcome Russia into the nation, the community of nations, rather than trying to push them against the wall. We know that their system of repression and domination is one in which they're going to feel as if their backs are against the wall. And I think you would probably agree that if Russia or China had missiles in Canada or Mexico targeting Washington, D.C., U.S. government would blow them to smithereens.
And look at Anderson Damage Control Cooper's face right here. You know that's true. If Russia or China had troops and air bases or military bases based to our northern border of Canada and our southern border of Mexico, you know Washington, D.C. would have something to say about that. They would feel like, man, we got to defend ourselves. It looks like they're trying to surround us and possibly attack us. How do you think Russia feels?
That's how empires behave. You've read the history. I know the history. We're critical of imperial activity, no matter who it is, American, Russian, and what have you. But America's the most powerful empire in the world, in the history of the world, my brother. And it seems to me if we can't dismantle that empire in order to empower poor and working people here and abroad, we're going to lose our democracy. It's almost like Rome, you know.
Look at Cooper's face. Dismantle the American empire? What the heck are you talking about, Cornel?
Cato the Younger and Cicero against Julius Caesar.
Right, but
what happens when your empire begins to take over your democratic possibilities?
I just spoke to the foreign minister of Ukraine. We're going to have that interview later on. I think if you said to him, you're standing with the people of Ukraine in solidarity, and you're saying that they are just victims in this proxy war, he would say, you're out of your mind. I mean, they are thankful.
Talk about an abject, in that sentence that he just spewed, talk about an abject denial of the historical actions of expanding empires. Give me a break.
They are thankful for NATO. They are thankful for the U.S. You can call it the American empire, but I mean, they are thankful for all these countries rallying to their...
You can call, hey, Cornel, I know you're really smart, and Anderson Cooper, if he hasn't already said it, he's about to say, hey, you're way more educated than I am on this. I think, yeah, he already did say it. But to call NATO part of the American empire, come on, that's kind of a stretch, isn't it?
Side. I mean, I've been there. You've probably been there as well. I mean, it is a horrible... It's an invasion. I mean, of killing civilians in cities.
Oh, no, it is a criminal invasion. I'm not denying it's a criminal invasion. But what I'm saying is, you go back to the men's talks. You go back to March, 1 month after the war began, my brother. I'm calling for ceasefire. I don't want to see the suffering.
You can call it for ceasefire. Vladimir Putin isn't really listening to what you say or I say or anybody says. I mean, he's doing what he wants to do, just like he slaughtered... I mean, you saw what he did to Grozny. You saw what he did to Grozny in the 90s. I mean, he flattened that city. Civilians were trapped in that city. No, the world didn't come to the rescue of Grozny. He did exactly what he wanted to do. I mean, unchecked, he will slaughter people.
Now let's talk about Grozny. And I do not want to minimize at all any harm inflicted or any casualties that suffered at the hands of the military-industrial complex. But I want to show you this real quick. This is the Wikipedia page on Grozny. It was a ballistic missile attack as a wave of Russian ballistic missile strikes on the Chechen capital of Grozny on October 21st, 1999. It says the attack killed at least 118 people, according to initial reports. And again, I'm not minimizing deaths because of the number of casualties in one attack or one war or one battle and another, because every life counts, okay? But when you're going to talk about, when Anderson Cooper is going to talk about, but what about Grozny? But what about Grozny? What about the 500,000 children who were ended in the Iraqi invasion, looking for what? Weapons of mass destruction, which they never found, which ended up being a complete lie. What about that? What about, and this isn't something you have to fabricate. This isn't some conspiracy theorist. This right here is Leslie Stahl interviewing then Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, questioning her on, was it really worth ending the lives of 500,000 children? I mean, more children died in those attacks than in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it? I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
The price of going into battle and ending the lives of 500,000 children, not including the other casualties, you know, adult casualties. They're not just out there, you know, offing little people. But they're saying invading a country, and now we know, under false pretenses, under absolute lies. See, that's what I have a problem with fake stream CIA infiltrated Operation Mockingbird MK Ultra Media, is that they lie. The reason you can't trust them is that they lied about weapons of mass destruction. And that lie produced killing field after killing field. Hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, were ended. And their lives were ruined. Their country was destroyed. All in the name of, we got to stop Saddam Hussein and weapons of mass destruction. All a complete lie. Fox News, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, they all played a part. MSNBC, they all played a part in that. You can never trust a network who's lied to you and whose lies produced such death and destruction in the lives of our fellow human beings throughout the world. And they continue to lie. And it's the same. It was the same back in the 1960s when they lied to you about the Gulf of Tonkin resolution and said the North Vietnamese torpedo boats were firing on the USS Maddox so that we could escalate what was going on in Vietnam. It doesn't stop.
Well, I mean, unchecked, he will slaughter folk. Unchecked, what we did in Iraq was slaughtering people. Unchecked, what we've done in other places. Unchecked,
but sir,
variety
Dr.
of
West,
other empires
Dr.
do
West,
that.
do
Nation
you really,
states do that, though.
No, I understand.
They're wrong. And when they're wrong, you have to pull up. You have to point it out.
Look, I respect you. You know, I love you. But I do think it's inappropriate to compare the Russian bombing of Grozny and what we witnessed there with the war in Iraq. I mean,
give me a freaking break. It's not even in the same hemisphere. It's not even comparing them. Isn't even the same universe as far as body count. Not even close.
To say that innocents are killed. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, the horrible things happen.
Half a million Iraqis killed, my brother.
Well,
500,000.
Yeah, listen, I was there. I mean, I
look at his face. Watch.
Killed, my brother.
Well,
500,000.
Look at his face. He knows, but he doesn't care. And he's got to stay with his script. And he's got to do what his masters tell him. And he's got to continue to go to bat for the military-industrial complex. Because it's our military. It's our people executing the tyranny. That makes it all right, Anderson Cooper. But if it's the Russian troops doing that to a bunch of Ukrainians, no, we can't accept that.
Yeah, listen, I was there. I mean, I was there. I was there with troops. I certainly understand. I also saw a lot of Americans getting killed, and I saw, the horrors of Saddam Hussein. I'm just saying I don't think it's accurate to compare the...
But how about the horrors of the American troops? I saw Americans getting killed. I saw the horrors of Saddam Hussein. But how about the horrors wrought at the hands of the U.S. troops? How about that? I mean, there are horrible videos coming out, or have come out, and are still coming out about what actually happened in Iraq. What U.S. troops were doing to kids, what they were doing to families, how they were torturing them and tormenting them, what some of these soldiers were doing to little puppy dogs found in the street.
The pummeling of a city by Russian artillery with civilians inside, pummeling every single day with the intention of just destroying and flattening a city.
Sounds like the American empire. The intent is just to destroy and flatten the city. Let's get in there, let's get out, and let's go do lunch.
With actions the U.S. took. I mean, I don't know. Look, wars, horrible things happen in wars, and it's horrible.
War, that's absolutely. But I mean, and I know any comparative analysis of levels of barbarity and cruelty is going to lend itself to this ugly algebra of blood that we don't want to get into. But all I'm saying is you can't just jump into a situation where people are being treated barbarically. There's no doubt that Ukrainian people are being treated in a barbaric way. That's that murderous way. There's no doubt about that. But the context is one in which that did not have to be if the expansion of NATO, and NATO is an arm of the American global power network. It's
but
just a fact.
What you're saying though in Ukraine is that...
Did you hear that?
NATO is an arm of the American global power network.
NATO, according to Cornel West, this isn't me saying this, NATO is a part of the American global power network. Just in case you didn't hear it.
The expansion of NATO, and NATO is an arm of the American global power network. It's just a fact.
What you're saying though in Ukraine,
those are the facts. You can't deny that.
Ukraine is that the Ukrainians, they're just going to have to compromise and give up their land because they're just in the wrong place.
That's how it's like. See, that's why I can't stand interactions and interviews like this. Cornel West should have said, "What did I say, Anderson Cooper, just now that wasn't true? The expansion of NATO and NATO itself is a part of the American global power network, and they are also responsible for this algebra of blood. Massive amounts of blood."
I'm not saying that.
Well, you've said there have to be hard compromises on all sides. You said there have to be hard compromises. You said there have to be compromises on all sides, and you know compromise for Ukraine means Crimea. It means whole parts of their east. Is that fair?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I want a just peace for my Ukrainian brothers and sisters, and I don't want World War III. I don't want World War III. The way that we're moving now, we got 3,000 advisors. Well, we heard that in Vietnam. We're on the way to possible nuclear exchange. How ugly. Here we got Trump pushing us toward the second civil war at home. You got Biden pushing us toward a third world war abroad. We need an alternative. That's what this campaign's probably about, my brother.
So that's why he says that he's running for the third party, for the Green Party. But again, this is a tip of the hat to the left versus right paradigm lie. And as harsh as some of these words are from Cornel West to the Anderson Coopers of the world, to the American military industrial complex, to the Republican Party, to the Democrat Party, he still calls them brothers. And this is how convoluted this whole thing is, because I'm convinced that with as many truthful words as Cornel West lobbed out into the universe with NATO being an expansion and an arm of the military industrial complex and the power brokers, the global power brokers that shouldn't be, he still gives preference to the left party and the right party as he runs for the Green Party. And this is all just a massive psychological operation to get people to get out there and to continue voting and go, hey, it's going to be different this time. Gary Johnson's going to be different. Jill Stein's going to be different. Cornel West is going to be different. Third-party candidates are going to be different. It'll be different. Do you not think that the third-party candidates are also controlled by the military-industrial complex, by the Federal Reserve, by the Zio International Banking Cartel, the powers that shouldn't be? Yes, they absolutely are. If voting mattered, guys, they would outlaw it. They would make it illegal. They wouldn't allow you to do it. The reason they want you to continue participating is because they want the chains of your own oppression to be bound around your wrists and your ankles and on your back with your approval. So leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comment section below. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to my email list through my website, highimpactflix.com. Follow me over on Twitter, follow me on Facebook, follow me on YouTube. I hope you get something out of this video. If you do, share it with everybody you know everywhere you can. If you want to support the channel, the support links are in the description or in the pinned comment or wherever this goes out to. But the bottom line is, guys, we've got to fight against this tyranny. And the way to do it is knowledge. Knowledge is power. When people get that knowledge and they come to the conclusion of, hey, I've got to get rid of my belief in this superstition called government, that's when we start changing things. That's when people go, you know what? I don't need the government to defend me. I don't need a handout. I'm going to take care of myself. That's where self-defense, self-determination, and basically self-dignity comes in. I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Thanks for tuning in.